Over the past decade, ride-sharing has become a popular form of transportation. It's convenient. Pull out your smartphone and order an Uber. I have used ride-sharing services both in Sydney, Australia and abroad. At times, has it felt sketchy? Sure. I think you guys listening have probably experienced this, but sometimes we have no choice. I remember travelling in Asia in 2016, and I would get into their equivalent of a taxi or Uber. As I sat in the car, I prayed to God that I would reach my destination unharmed. My paranoia and anxiety would spiral out of control. I would try to convey to the driver where I wanted to go. However, they would not understand me due to the language barrier, and I often thought they would just dump me somewhere and take my money. Fortunately, to date, it was just that, a hyper state of paranoia. I have always arrived at my destination safely, albeit a little worked up, but safe nonetheless. Unfortunately, Samantha Josephson wasn't as lucky. She got into what she thought was the Uber she ordered after leaving a bar in Columbia, South Carolina. Instead, she stepped into the vehicle of a psychopath. What started as a missing persons case turned into a homicide case. Samantha Josephson was never again seen alive. Her body was found covered in 120 stab wounds and dumped in some remote woods 65 miles from Columbia. This narrative is Samantha Josephson. The story of Samantha begins in New Jersey, a northeastern state with 135 miles of Atlantic coast. Also known as a Golden State, New Jersey is home to 9 million residents. It's a very unique state. It's a leading grower of produce. It ranks 5th in blueberry production, 3rd in cranberry production, 3rd in spinach, 3rd in bell peppers, and 4th in peach production in the United States. The state is also home to 14 of the world's 20 largest pharmaceutical companies. Doing business in New Jersey is popular due to the state's operating tax credit, allowing companies to sell their net operating losses to the New Jersey Treasury. Princeton is a small town in the middle of New Jersey. It sits in between New York and Philadelphia. Samantha Josephson, also known as Sammy, was born in this town in 1998 and grew up in Robbinsville, New Jersey. She was the daughter to her mother Marcy, and her father was Seymour. She had a sister named Sydney who was a very similar age to Samantha. The family of 4 had a normal life like many other middle-class Americans. Sydney and Samantha were very close as they grew up in Robbinsville, New Jersey. Several years later, in 2015, Samantha attended the University of South Carolina. She made many friends and really enjoyed the life she was building. This is where she met and fell in love with her boyfriend, Greg Corbishley. The two of them met in 5 Points at one of the bars, a popular place for students to drink and socialize. Samantha was studying political science with aspirations of becoming an international lawyer. She was ambitious and studious, and at the time of her death, she had just gotten accepted into Drexel Law School on a full scholarship. Samantha was also a member of the Alpha Gamma Delta sorority, an international women's organization committed to providing opportunities for personal development, services to others, and the space for members to forge their own paths, all through a lifelong spirit of sisterhood. During her time at USC, she studied abroad in Barcelona and visited Madrid and Paris. On one occasion in 2018, her sister Sydney met Samantha in Barcelona during her semester there. Her family and friends described her as someone who was bubbly, loving, kind, and full of life. She would light up the room. In early 2019, Samantha was a senior and had a few months left to complete her final exams at USC. Her time with her friends was starting to run out. It was the middle of March, and everyone was studying hard, preparing for their final exams. In a few weeks, they would all go their separate ways, so they tried to make the most of their time together while they could. Samantha and Greg's relationship was developing into something more serious. They would support their local football team together, drink at their local bar in 5 Point, and communicate with each other every day. He actually graduated a year prior and was living in Mount Pleasant, about 2 hours away. He was looking for a job, and they were already starting to make future plans. Due to the difficult nature of law school, Greg was planning to move to Philadelphia to make seeing each other easier and reduce the stress on Samantha. Moving on to March 28, 2019. Samantha was in a very flat mood. She confided in Greg earlier that day about a medical issue with a family member. Samantha needed comforting and pleaded for Greg to come see her at Columbia and spend the night with her. It wasn't unusual for Greg to make the 2-hour trip up to Columbia from Charleston. However, Greg was already busy that day. He promised his brother he'd look after his dog in Mount Pleasant. Greg always went to Columbia, but she never went to Charleston, and she was supposed to come down in 2 days anyway, so he figured he'd see her then. That evening, Greg and Samantha exchanged text messages and FaceTime calls. He suggested that Samantha go out that night in order to take her mind off the situation, celebrate getting into law school with her friends, and enjoy a night out. She deserved to have a good time. After they finished their conversation, Greg went to the gym at about 9 p.m. While at the gym, they were still contacting each other via text and FaceTime. She really needed Greg. She was still upset and needed comfort about this medical issue with her family. However, with some convincing from Greg, Samantha ended up going out for drinks. At 12:30 a.m., Samantha and her friends arrived at the Bird Dog in 5 Point, Columbia, a place they would visit regularly. It was very popular with USC students. It had good music and good vibes. Samantha and Greg were still in constant communication with each other. She was still feeling down and pleaded for Greg to come to Columbia. She could not take her mind off her worries and even accidentally separated from her friends despite all her efforts trying to have a good time. After a few hours, Samantha had enough and called it a night. The last time Greg spoke to Samantha was at 2:04 a.m. At that point, she was leaving the bar to go home and called an Uber. She lived at The Hub, an apartment complex a few miles northwest from the Bird Dog. It was too far to walk from the bar, so the only option was to catch an Uber. This surveillance video, taken at 2:06 a.m, shows Samantha on the phone to Greg while waiting for her Uber. As many of us do, Samantha did something to help keep her safe while using the driving service. She shared her location using the Find My Friends app with her boyfriend and roommate so they could make sure she got home safely. Surveillance footage shows at 2:12 a.m, a 2017 black Chevrolet Impala pulls into the disabled parking spot. Samantha assumes this is her Uber, and before it could come to a complete stop, Samantha opens her right rear door and gets in. Seconds later, as seen on this surveillance footage, the black Chevrolet reverses from the disabled parking spot and drives away, driving south-southeast on Hardin Street. Samantha and Greg are no longer on the phone, but Greg immediately logs into the Find My Friends app and starts tracking her, ensuring she gets home safely. What happens next immediately alarms Greg. The Uber went south of the Bird Dog in the complete opposite direction to the Hub. Greg immediately tried to call Samantha, but it kept going to voicemail. He texted her, but they were never read. Greg thought that maybe Samantha was going back to one of her friends' houses, but a lack of communication was bizarre. The whole evening she was confiding and communicating with Greg, and now she's in a quiet car ride home and all of a sudden, nothing. He continued tracking her, all the meanwhile she kept travelling further south. He made more attempts at contacting her. This time he tried Snapchat, and still no answer. A further twist occurred between 2:30 and 2:40 a.m. Samantha's phone stopped sharing her location on the app, and she disappeared off the map. Her last known location was on Montgomery Avenue, approximately 6 miles from the Bird Dog. In the history of the relationship, this has never happened before. Greg was confused. He thought maybe Samantha had left her phone in the Uber, and the Uber had gone home. He contacted Samantha's friends around 3 a.m. to explain the situation. They came to the same conclusion as Greg. With this information from her friends, he was somewhat reassured and went to bed shortly after 5 a.m. expecting to hear from her later in the morning. A few hours later, however, the silence would continue. At about 11 a.m, Greg woke up to calls from her roommate Carly saying that Samantha never came home. He called the Liberty Tap Room, a place where Samantha would waitress for some extra money on the side. He knew she had a shift that day at 11 a.m, but uncharacteristically, she never showed up. Greg immediately drives to Colombia. When he got there, he noticed a police officer at the hub speaking to the roommates. The police were dispatched in response to this 911 call made by Samantha's roommate.
911, what's emergency?
Hi, we were just gonna call to let you know our friend is missing.
What's the address? Where are you located?
1426 Main Street.
Is he missing from his address?
We went out in 5 Points last night, and she still hasn't made it home. Her phone's dead. We don't think she, went home with, a guy or anything. We're, actually, worried. So, she missed work this morning.
Alright, what is her name?
Samantha Josephson.
At 2 p.m, Greg and Samantha's friends filed a missing persons report to the police. Following an interview with the police, Greg and Samantha's friends went to Samantha's last known location on Montgomery Avenue. They started searching for Samantha on their own accord. They knocked on the neighbours' doors in the area to see if anyone saw Samantha or anything suspicious. Unfortunately, no one saw anything. They then scanned the 5 Points and the surrounding area. They were all dead ends. After, they made their way to the Bird Dog to review their surveillance footage, and that's when they saw the footage of Samantha getting into the black Chevrolet Impala. They showed this footage to the police and desperately circled back to Montgomery Avenue for a last-ditch search. Again, nothing. It's now approximately 10 p.m, and Samantha's parents have been notified. They drive down to meet Greg and Samantha's friends at the police station. When Greg got there and saw the distraught look on Samantha's parents' faces, his biggest fear was confirmed. Greg collapses. Samantha's body was found just hours earlier, 65 miles southeast from where she disappeared in Colombia. The attack was vicious. She was stabbed more than 100 times. A body of her size would typically have at least 1 gallon of blood. Samantha only had about 1.3 tablespoons. In other words, Samantha was all but drained of her blood. Samantha's family and Greg were distraught. Greg was particularly traumatized. What he witnessed the night before was his girlfriend's abduction and consequent murder. Soon after learning the devastating truth about Samantha, her family and Greg wanted answers. Samantha was such a beautiful girl. Who would do such a thing? What was their motive? Thanks to the persistence of Greg and her friends, the police already had some early leads. The surveillance footage from the Bird Dog showed the police of Samantha's whereabouts that night. One of her friends made a substantial discovery. After breaking into her laptop and reading her emails, it was discovered Samantha's Uber driver circled the area a few times before cancelling the booking. This means Samantha inadvertently stepped into a stranger's car. These clues were very useful to the police. Straight away they had a time, a location, a suspect, a direction, and most importantly, a vehicle. Even if the driver wasn't a suspect, this information would allow police to retrace her final steps. What was suspicious about the surveillance footage was a Chevy Impala could be seen lurking near 5 Points, and after driving past and seeing Samantha on her own, it went into the car park, did a U-turn, and picked her up. The police put out a notice on a black Chevrolet Impala and to profile any driver found in one. On March 30 at 3:23 a.m, K9 officer Kraft spotted a vehicle near 5 Points matching the car's description that Samantha entered the night she went missing. This was about 24 hours after Samantha's disappearance. Officer Kraft followed the car down some suburban streets before turning on the lights for a few minutes and pulling over the Chevy Impala. I'm going to stop talking and let you watch what happens next.
What's going on, sir? You got your license? You got your license on you? I'm also Columbia Police Department K9. No, no license on you. Why not?
Is that the hoodie you were describing?
It is.
And then the bandana underneath?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, man. Who's smoking the marijuana?
I had smoked some earlier, sir, when I was at home.
All right. All right, man. You're going to have to step on out, man. All right, here's the deal, man. I pulled your car over because it matches the suspect. Get your hand in your pocket. What are you, crazy? Get over here. Hey, get over here. Go and run. Hey, I'm gonna release the dog. I can't. I was just gonna see if he'll stop. Bravo Mike wearing the gray sweatpants, gray sweatshirt. Walk him up. Doors blocked, 500 block. Nunez, keep going. He's gonna be on your left.
Sir, back around.
The man they captured and then arrested was Nathaniel Rowland. His attempted evasion was for a good reason. Nathaniel was of African heritage. He was born in 1994 in a town called New Zion in Clarendon County. He was raised with his siblings by his parents. His mother's name is Loretta Rowland and his father's name is Henry Rowland. He attended school at East Clarendon High School and played basketball. At the time of the arrest, he was a boyfriend of Maria Howard. As we find out later, Maria is a crucial witness for the prosecution. His former coach, Justin Waiters, said Nathaniel was a great kid with a very involved family. It seems Nathaniel had a pretty normal life, so how could he have committed such a heinous crime? When digging a little deeper into Nathaniel, we learn about some troubling behaviour in his later life. Nathaniel was fined for transporting alcohol in a motor vehicle in Sumter County, and received a handful of speeding and seatbelt tickets in Richland, Lexington, Clarendon, Orangeburg, and Sumter counties. 5 months before Samantha's murder on October 19, 2018, Nathaniel and another male adult carjacked a lady while she was at some traffic lights and then forced her to drive to an ATM and took all of her money. They then drove to her house and robbed her. Then several hours later, Nathaniel sold some of those items at a pawn shop. Nathaniel was arrested for obtaining a signature under false pretense value at $2,000 or less, but he was never charged with a carjacking or robbery. Even though there were no human witnesses, there was plenty of evidence linking Nathaniel Rowland to Samantha Josephson's murder. There's blood everywhere in his car, including the back seat and the passenger seat. As harrowing as it sounds, they also found Samantha's phone. This was the first clue that tied Nathaniel to the crime. There was also bleach and germicide products in his car. More and more evidence points to Nathaniel as the perpetrator. Furthermore, other discoveries reveal Nathaniel's intentions that evening in a very ominous and clear manner. You may be wondering why Samantha didn't attempt to open the car door and escape. Well, after further investigation, it was revealed that Nathaniel's Impala was equipped with childproof windows and door locks that could only be disengaged by the driver. That evening, Nathaniel was on the prowl, and he made sure anyone who fell into his car was not going to escape. Samantha couldn't escape no matter how hard she tried. The windows on the Impala were tinted. The night was dark, and the street was filled with people and loud music. On March 29th, Nathaniel was supposed to take his girlfriend to work in the morning. He was late, and when he arrived, she noticed blood in the back seat. So much so that she thought a dog was killed in his car. And when she asked Nathaniel where it came from, he told her to mind her own business. Cell phone tower data and a Find My Friend social app on Samantha's phone tracked the two phones moving together away from the brightly lit 5 Points area towards dimly lit Shandon and Rosewood residential areas. Samantha's cell phone's app went dead after about 20 minutes, but cell phone towers continued tracking Nathaniel's phone for hours. More cell phone evidence showed Nathaniel's cell phone moving back towards Sumter, where it stopped near a Wells Fargo bank. Video from an ATM showed a man resembling Nathaniel. In the video, he was seen wearing a hoodie and trying to access her account. Other cell phone tracking data showed Nathaniel going to another ATM in Columbia, to the house of his girlfriend, Maria Howard, and later in the morning to a cell phone repair store on Monticello Road. The store's video captured a black Chevrolet Impala in the store's parking lot, and a man resembling Nathaniel inside the store. The man tried to sell a rose-pink Apple phone to the store operator, but they couldn't agree on a price. The phone turned out to be Samantha's. When police searched Nathaniel's house, they found more cleaning products and a handheld multi-tool with both of its blades extended. There was blood on this tool, and when police tested it, the DNA was a positive match to Samantha. Samantha's blood was also found on a bandana, a sock, and under his fingernails. Dr. Thomas, a very experienced forensic pathologist, confirmed Samantha had over 120 stab wounds on her body, feet, back, leg, torso, lung, shoulder, and on the top and side of her head. The unusual double-bladed multi-tool explains some of the parallel close-together stab wounds on Samantha's body. She had wounds going all the way through her hands, indicating Samantha fought hard to stay alive. She also had scratches on her body, but this was due to being dragged along the ground before being dumped in the woods. Nathaniel most likely stabbed and murdered Samantha in the Impala and then dumped her body off a dirt road 65 miles near his hometown of New Zion. The evidence was insurmountable, and on July 27, 2021, Nathaniel was found guilty of kidnapping and murdering Samantha and of possessing a weapon during a violent crime. He was sentenced to life in prison. It took the jury a little over an hour to reach a verdict. Throughout the trial, Nathaniel remained quiet. Aside from occasionally whispering to his lawyers, Nathaniel appeared to be expressionless. Research shows people who commit violent crimes could fall into two common categories: the predator or the opportunist. An opportunist may not be looking to kill, but if someone climbs into the back of their car, the opportunity has presented itself. It's impossible to know until someone has a chance to sit down and evaluate Nathaniel. Until then, there will always be questions about his past, as well as his motivation for allegedly killing Samantha. Any parent who is faced with the traumatic loss of a child, especially one whose life is abruptly taken by murder, may find it difficult to cope with their loss. Samantha's father, Seymour, said losing Samantha was like losing his best friend, and that he even considered suicide at times. Mercy Seymour, Samantha's mother, said she used to have dreams, but now she only has nightmares. Samantha had a very promising future ahead of her. Her dreams of becoming a lawyer will never be realized. She will never marry Greg and never reach all the other milestones she would have accomplished throughout her life. Samantha did make the mistake of stepping into a vehicle of an unknown driver without checking their identity first. And while this would normally result in an embarrassing confrontation between driver and passenger, unfortunately, this cost Samantha her life. In the wake of Samantha's death, South Carolina legislated the Samantha Josephson Ride-Sharing Safety Act. In South Carolina, ride-sharing employees are now required to display their vehicle driver's license plate number on the front of their cars. In September 2019, Uber and Lyft expanded safety measures nationwide. Uber offers an emergency button where users can connect to 911. Drivers are also required to snap selfies periodically to ensure they are where they claim to be on the app. There is also a ride verification system available, with drivers required to enter a PIN number from the passengers before the ride can begin. Similar to Uber, Lyft added features to its app to ensure safety. One feature implemented by Lyft allows you to share your ride and location with friends, and if your ride is stopped too soon or for an unusual amount of time, a representative will reach out to see if you need help. Even though Samantha's life was ripped away from her parents, they established the foundation of What's My Name, a foundation dedicated to ongoing education for ride-sharing safety. In addition to the What's My Name movement, they created a 5km/1 mile run in Samantha's honour. I'll leave a link to the What's My Name movement in the description below. I want to talk about Greg. He and Samantha frequently used the Find My Friends app to track each other's whereabouts and ensure they arrived safely. However, he never expected to be witnessing the very thing they were afraid of happening in real time. That must have been terrifying. In honour of Samantha's death, Greg decided to pursue a career in criminal prosecution. Greg wishes to make a positive impact on society. Samantha was buried at the Perrineville Jewish Cemetery in New Jersey. In addition to the What's My Name movement, those touched by Samantha's story attend a 5-kilometer run every year to honour the life of a beautiful girl whose life was cruelly cut short.